Car dealers, that's one of the big differences. Yeah.
Jamie, did you have any changes with the minutes?
Look at that. I don't believe I could look at it.
Let's send the truth out.
I'm fine with it. I just didn't know if you had some comments or changes or.
Yeah, let me give it a quickie. I'm sorry. Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah.
That's why you didn't get it
Okay.
tonight.
That was the reason. So I don't think it's like. The only thing is, of course, they don't. If we were to change it and they don't. You send this to you and I'll do this then.
This is all.
Any- I'm not sure how definitely.
I'll try to read it through in between.
That's my plan. Hi.
You want to hold that to the end of the calendar?
Sure.
So we're gonna begin?
Oh, no. Good to go.
Hey, 6:30.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of January 10th.
We're gonna hold off on that until the end of the meeting.
Oh,
We want to get a little input from council.
from what?
From attorney.
Oh, okay.
We are going to reverse some of the order of the thing on the agenda this evening. So today we are starting with Twin Shores property. This is a recommendation to the town board relative to a zone change request. This is property located on North Burdick Street, known as the Fietta property. It covers tax map number 086-2-02-1, 086-2-3.0, 086-2-4.1, 086-02-5.1, 086-2-5.3, and lastly, 086-2-2.1, -6.1. If we could hear from the applicant as to what they are seeking to do and why.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Tom Serio. I'm here on behalf of the applicant Twin Shores. Just by way of introduction, we have Mr. Newman here with us from Twin Shores and Joe Durant from TDK Engineering. As you know, we're here tonight because the town board referred our zone change application to your board for a recommendation. Also, just by way of housekeeping, the town board also scheduled a public hearing for this matter on February 9th. And the Syracuse Onondaga County Planning Agency, SACPA, on January 19th, completed its review. And I think you've all been provided with a copy of the report, but they determined that the proposed zone change would have no significant intercommunity or countywide impacts. As you can see from our application maps, we're asking for a zone change to CA and RA, which is commercial A and restricted agricultural. We did amend our original application to remove the request for commercial B. We did that, I think, by way of a letter of amendment, January 14th. But to remove commercial B and substitute commercial A. So basically, the request, among other things, makes the subject property consistent with the area. The majority of the change occurs adjacent to North Burdick Street, and it creates two commercial A zones while preserving the bulk of the property as restricted agricultural. And that is pretty much it.
Just out of curiosity, the one piece of RA that sits along North Burdick in between the two CAs. What's the deal with that, I guess?
I'm not sure, Joe, do you know why that's the RA?
That's the original zoning is RA. And that's supposed to stay.
So you don't want to change it?
No. And it's next to the cell tower property for reference.
The cell tower that's currently there.
Okay, got it.
I've got a question or two.
Sure.
There are a couple very older houses, some of the classified as dilapidated. What is your intent with regard to those structures?
They will be demolished.
Okay. Members of the board?
I guess to follow up on that, when?
Probably as soon as our site work is approved. Possibly before that, even before, once we maintain control and ownership passes and title passes, we're gonna start. Then we'll be back, as you know, in front of this board for site plan approval.
So I guess then the next couple questions.
Yep.
Get my mask off. You say when title passes and so on and so forth.
Yep.
If this zone change is approved, is that it? Title passes, or are there other conditions?
No other conditions.
Okay, all right.
Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to clarify something. The property you referred to, the one across from the medical center?
Yeah.
Medical center area. I just want to make sure that's the one that is RA proposed to stay.
It's,
RA.
I'll point to it. It's that piece right there.
It's a flag.
Yeah, that's,
Yeah.
That's the one.
that's the one that's carved out.
Just want to make sure.
It's that right there.
That's the cell tower property.
Okay,
Okay.
so that's gonna say, okay, that's fine.
I have a question. Can I get a better understanding? So my understanding is that this is a proposed location for the town.
Part of it, yes, the town, exactly. Yep.
Okay, and so if I don't know how far, I'm not sure they're completely all the way along with that.
They are
So
not.
if-
Right.
So would you guys then own the property and then would the idea be that you would do it something else CA?
Mhm.
Yeah,
in that area?
If it's unfortunate enough where that doesn't work out, yes.
Are you even as far along as having backup plans yet?
Not really, because until we have the zone change, it's hard to discuss with anyone.
This is what it
Any potential
is.
prospective tenants.
Where's the one?
Valerie, that's why I asked that question, because if they don't get the zone change, it's done.
Yeah, and I think that just to reiterate, the idea was to conform with the business, the zones across the street. It all
That's correct.
seems to.
In the general area,
Yeah, it
yeah.
all seems to match up within the general area. They couldn't be more than happier that those buildings are gonna be taken down. They've been an eyesore for years, and I've had people talk to me about that for a long time, so sooner the better.
How many houses are you gonna take down?
Well, all of them that are there.
Yeah, they're.
Two or three, yeah.
If they're unoccupied, all of them?
Members of the board, any further questions? Discussion?
Seems pretty simple.
It's not going to impact any residents other than the ones that need to come down. They're coming down. It should have virtually no impact on adjoining properties.
I think it's great. I'm glad something is being developed.
I would entertain a motion for,
I think we have to go through some criterion, which I have to pull up, which I did not think we were gonna approve it tonight.
Well, this is just a recommendation.
I know,
Oh.
but there's still criterion. There is, yeah.
Seems to make sense.
Have to hold off for a minute. Sorry, I don't have it ready. But we got the county came back, which It has
Oh,
not
for the
come
zone
back.
change.
For the zone change, but, okay. All right, this will take me a minute.
No, no.
I thought they did. Okay, no, that is not effective. That shouldn't affect the zone. Yes, yes. Yeah, little.
It's crossed right from, right from here.
Sure can.
What just crossed the creek in here? Isn't there?
Sure can.
That's news to me. if That's the case.
I just heard, I don't know for sure. I'm just asking. I said, oh, God. I think you're okay. I think you're okay. Just put some reason behind it. Any reasonable condition.
We don't have any conditions.
No.
Okay. Okay, we've heard from council and and I would entertain a motion relative to a recommendation to the town board concerning a zone change.
I would, go ahead.
I'll make
And
that move.
A second, a positive recommendation.
Positive recommendation.
okay, and that's made in second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Right, thank
You're
you,
approved.
Mr. Chairman. Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Next item on the agenda is an application by Abundant Solar Power. This is scheduled this evening for a public hearing relative to site plan and special use permit for a solar array located on Bowman Road. Tax map number 074-01-06.1. Madam Secretary, did we properly publish the notice of public hearing?
Make a motion to waive the reading.
Motion to waive the reading, second by Ann, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The reading of the notice of publication is hereby waived. We normally would proceed forward with secret prior to opening up a public hearing. And we're not going to do that this evening because this particular property in this particular circumstance, it's waived by the state of New York. So there will be no secret recommendation, but we do need to go through special use criteria. And our town,
Which I'll pull up, maybe they can start and then I'll pull that up. I'm a little slow in the uptake today.
we are having a little delay with our computer system. Did the developer want to say anything prior to us entertaining a motion for opening the public hearing?
Yeah, I would be happy to just go through what we've submitted. I just passed this over. In the meantime, I guess since the last time we were here, we received a letter, I guess a memo from the planning board engineer, Doug Miller, with his recommendations to the planning board for what needs to be submitted in support of the special use. So we did prepare a letter in response where we addressed each of the items, many of which had already been submitted as part of our initial package. Some of the additional documentation we provided, which we'll talk about further later, was some visual mapping to show relative elevation of the array and the surrounding area and the areas of tree cover. We submitted the FAA determination of no impact to the local airports. We submitted some more information on the electrical three-line diagram to show all the various components of the proposed array. And we will be talking more on the revised site plan regarding the access road a little later. We talked about the state's requirements for stormwater, particularly in relation to solar arrays. New York State has very specific requirements, or some requirements that you can use for solar arrays that allow you some leniency in addressing and doing a full construction SWIFT, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in the presentation. And so there was one more thing I wanted to hit on. We did update the O&M plan for the site to include the mowing at a minimum of once a year, if not more. That would be abundance responsibility. The other thing I did include was an outline of the example of an engineering report that we prepared in support of the change of use determination. So a lot of the things that may come up in relation to the design of the array, the ballasting, the landfill cap, the protection of the landfill cap, and the maintenance of the landfill cap, and the ongoing monitoring of the landfill. All of this will be addressed again as part of the DEC application for them to approve the change of use. So we provide an updated O&M manuals. Those are current post-closure manual for the facility, which will be updated to incorporate the solar and layout, who's responsible for what and how things would keep happening. But also an engineering report that we submit separately that talks about the landfill cap, the construction practices, the integrity of the landfill cap, and the stormwater. So all of these things, the DEC will also get an approval on before they approve the change of use to use the cap for that purpose.
One of our bigger problems at our last meeting we had was relative to the access road. And if I'm reading your 34-page report response correctly, you are consenting and will make that alteration and are going to put in a 20-foot access road.
Yes, there will be a 20-foot access road provided. We're still looking for some feedback from the emergency responders on the extent of where that road has to go offset. We are committed to putting a 20-foot wide access road at a minimum to the center of the array to provide access for emergency vehicles, and they can turn around and they can offset.
We did attempt to have a call with the emergency responders and the highway superintendent last week, but we didn't seem to be able to get everybody on the same page. We tried to do the same today, but once again, couldn't get everybody together. So we're not giving up on having that discussion just so that we can have real clarity on what their concerns are so that we can address those concerns. We moved forward this week in consulting with the DEC about format and design criteria for construction of a road that large on a landfill path. And so that dialogue has been begun, and you'll see we include a small image that was provided to us by the DEC.
And so we've also got some feedback from them on the stormwater implications. That was something I brought up at the last meeting. They have an approved design for solar arrays for a permeable access road design for gravel, a limited use as in not being traveled every day, but limited number of times a year. They have an approved cross section for that road that would be a permeable road, so that alleviates some of our stormwater.
Okay.
So we have had that dialogue with the DEC.
Okay. Now, my intent is to open the public hearing. And would you be available to respond to any inquiries made by the public relative to questions they have? And then you wanted to present something else before we break?
So we have prepared a deck that, a PowerPoint that speaks to a lot of the questions that were asked. I just like to say thank you for all your feedback. We read every letter and we aggregated our responses because a number of the queries revolved around similar issues. And it actually sent us hunting more broadly for common questions and answers in the large scale solar field. So I have a couple of things that I'd like to share with you pertaining to that. So my idea for approaching this was to, it's fairly healthy deck, but to flip through it in order to give you some context for who we are and where we are in the process. And then to specifically deal with some of your issues. And then we have a number of images that we'd like to share with you because frequently pictures speak 1,000 words.
Okay.
That work? So I'm just a
Do we-
little perplexed.
Do we have the
as to how
opportunity to question
Oh, public hearing is for everybody, including us. Yes.
prior to the public
Yeah,
hearing?
we're not.
If you want to ask questions.
Yeah.
Please feel free.
The last paragraph of the lease talks about recording the lease. Has it been recorded?
You mean memorandum of lease of county?
Memorandum, yes.
You know what?
And the reason I asked that question is, my concern is, at the last town board meeting, the legal description of the premises, I believe, was approved. I don't know if the legal description of the access easement was approved.
So,
Either way, let me just finish this. Either way, if they were approved and the lease was recorded, they need to be recorded.
you're right.
In addition, anything that you've agreed to do, whether it's mowing or whatever we've talked about over the last few meetings, those items need to be put in the lease amendment and recorded to put people on notice. So first question is, was the lease recorded?
No, so it was not because we didn't have the legal description at the time.
Okay,
So now that we have the legal description and it has been shared with Mr. Shetty, we can go ahead and do that.
okay. So we also talked about the grading and leveling of the premises, and you said, we know we can't do that. Is that going to be part of this amendment to put future people on notice? They can't do it.
So I think what we said was, and we've seen this most recently, we're working on a project at the at the Auburn landfill. And what we found when we did very detailed aerial observations, that there were some small depressions on the cap, but it's a fairly large cap. It's a little bigger than the Manlius landfill. And so those would have needed to be leveled, but we're not bringing in gear to level. We're actually bringing in aggregate and leveling underneath the either the tubs or the precast concrete ballast.
Okay, so that's a plan that you'll present to us for our review,
So
our
that-
engineers
that
review?
becomes part of the detailed engineering study that
Okay.
was submitted with the building permit.
Okay. All right. So the things that you've agreed to over the last 2 or 3 meetings, that will be in some form of a lease amendment recorded along with the lease. So that,
when we come to an agreement on the actual site plan, how we're going to address the road concerns and all of that.
Yeah.
That would go towards a lease amendment, and absolutely that shall be reported together.
okay. The lease also calls for future easements for connectivity. Are you planning on presenting to us where those easements are, the easement documentation, whatever, so it can be part of what's recorded?
So right now, we have provided the utility with our requirements, our electrical drawings, and the original site plan. We've also gone to the DEC for a wetland permit, and the wetland permit is actually because in the easement access area from the road, there are actually utility poles that are positioned there.
Okay,
So We believe those to be correctly positioned and appropriately drawn at this point. We've paid our 25% deposit with the utility, so they're all read in on what we're doing. But they don't actually do a kickoff site visit until later in the process. So when they come and they actually finalize their design, we can come back to you with that finalized design. Right now, we have contemplated the lease and easement agreement as one, but if you would like to see a secondary easement agreement when that design is finalized and signed off on by
I think it's
do that.
okay. And the easement, the access easement that is at the entrance, that has been given to the town for the review, the actual easement document.
No, so it's a lease and easement agreement is what it's called. We have not come to you with a secondary easement document. The assumption has always been that we're using the pre-existing road,
It would be what?
that we're using the pre-existing road, the one that's already there.
Okay, well, from a site plan review, and I can't speak for the town board, they can do what they want. But from a site plan, those kinds of things need to be, in my opinion, I'm just one person, but they need to be included so we can look at the easement document, look at where it is, look at the premises and so on and so forth. And these other future easements, if they're not available now, and they're going to be available in 6 months, would need to be a site plan amendment. I'm just trying to forecast out.
So every town is different, as you know, in New York. So I've had some sites permitted where there's never been a requirement for a secondary easement document. That the pre-existing road that we defined in the legal description is just part of
But it hasn't been defined yet, but continue.
the leased area. So I've also had permitting approved where a secondary easement agreement, that's a very simple agreement, in fact, it's usually about 5 or 6 pages long, that it is used to reinforce that easement language. So if that's what you're telling me is required, then we will by all means get it for you.
Okay. I'm just, as I look at a site plan, I'd like to know where these easements are going to be prior to them being approved somewhere down the road by somebody else.
Right, well, it's the road, it's there, and it's actually.
No,
included in the legal description.
Yeah, but you have legal description around the road that's there, and it's wider than the road.
Yeah.
So there's got to be a legal description that comes with it.
Yes, indeed.
And maybe the town board approved it. I don't know. I'm just throwing that question out there. I want to make sure that we know what it is.
Okay,
And these future easements with connectivity, we need to know what those are too.
yeah, so there will only be one. We only get approval with the DEC once. We don't like to go back to them.
I don't blame you.
And they are very clear that they don't like us to be messing with their wetlands or the wetland buffers.
Yeah,
We try
okay,
the best
all right,
for our ability
okay.
not to do that.
All right, I just want to get some clarity.
Okay. We can take a break and move right into special use criteria.
Sure. So we have done this with all of the solar projects, and the question is, will the project have an adverse effect on adjacent lands, the immediate neighborhood, or on the character of the community? And to answer that, there's the following questions that must be answered. In this plan, is the community protected from traffic congestion and conflicts, flooding and excessive soil erosion, unnecessary noise, lighting and odors, wasteful energy use, and other forms of pollution? Does the plan protect the community from inappropriate design and other matters of scenic and aesthetic significance? Does the plan ensure that the proposed use will be in harmony with the appropriate and orderly development of the district in which it is proposed? Can any adverse impacts be mitigated by compliance with reasonable conditions? Does the town project conform with the town's planning goals and objectives? And is a condition for restrictions of operations reasonable as a proper exercise of the planning board's police powers for the preservation of the health, safety, and welfare of its residents, and provided it's reasonably related to legitimate government purpose? And the planning board may require modifications to development proposals, submission of alternative design and layout proposals, and may attach reasonable conditions and safeguards to eliminate or minimize potential impacts as a precondition of its approval.
That's one sentence.
That's a long question.
No.
I didn't say the ABCD, but anyway, they were all separate.
At this point in
Criteria.
time, I think the answer is yeah, everything is, I'm not seeing any issues.
Right.
Well, I'm not so sure that the folks in the room would agree.
That's just what I was gonna say, Arnie,
There's
thank you.
the bit about the scenic, the way the neighborhood looks. Everything I've seen from the residents, that's the primary objection, is that because the landfill is as high as it is, it's visible already before you put the solar array on it. So unless you can come up with some way to screen it, so that we don't have to look at 15 or 20 acres of solar arrays, for all those folks who look out their northwest windows on every and Stargazer, what's your plan for them?
So we have some renderings actually that we did, if we at some point can share a slide deck. So the placement of this array on a landfill cap and the elevation of the cap, there aren't really options for screening. But there is natural existing screening of this landfill. There is mature vegetation surrounding 95% of the perimeter of this landfill. So the photos that we were sent were the views from the second story, I believe, of the homes, have a filtered view of this hill in the wintertime when there aren't leaves on the trees. And we were able to do a rendering of what that would look like with vegetation, with leaves on those trees. And there's very little view of the hill in those conditions. If you stand on the hill and look around, you can see a couple of second story windows actually to the north, and that's through the access road that cuts through the trees, which would be the back side of the array. There's a couple houses that would see the back side of the array. But if you turn and look to the south, you don't see any of the homes from there. At my height, at 5'8". Because you can't see them through the trees, you just see trees. And I was there in the summertime when all the leaves are on the trees, you don't see them. In the wintertime, the photos that we were given also show the DeWitt solar array in the distance that you can't really tell it's there because it's covered in snow. So when it's snowy conditions, the panels are covered in snow and they're going to blend in. And when it's not, so the leaves are off the tree for those couple of trees for those couple of months each side when we don't have snow. There's a filtered view of the solar array through the branches and things on the trees, and we have some visual of that here.
So just for clarification, there's nothing additional that you're gonna do.
No, there is nothing additional we're going to do for screening.
Okay.
So if I may, one of the reasons this site was considered, obviously there's a very fulsome strategy in the town of Manlius to support sustainable initiatives. I was just looking at Chris Carrick from the Central New York Regional Planning Board's itemized list of all the initiatives that the town has undertaken, and it's impressive to say the least. So this solar array is part of that. It's a community solar array, which means the power will be sold to local residents who will become subscribers of the array, and they'll be taking green energy located locally from the array. The approach by developers to actually find sites is a balancing act between remote and access to interconnection through the grid and finding sites that aren't completely rural where you're taking greenfield to make green energy. So where landfills are concerned, they're almost the perfect solution from a solar development perspective. They're capped, they're sealed, and they're not accessible for any other use because they have monitoring requirements that last for at least 30 years, probably more. And they are typically located in areas that are contained. We just recently permitted and are planning construction this spring on the Elbridge landfill. It's very similar to this, with the exception that it doesn't have a lovely development on its southern edge, but relatively remote with pre-existing natural vegetation surrounding the landfill. And typically, by virtue of the landfill being a man-made hill, they've actually precipitated wetlands around them, which are also no-fly zones. So there's lots of naturally occurring wildlife and vegetation around landfills. Because this one is almost perfectly contained, if you look at it relative to the DeWitt landfill, it has no natural barrier around it. We've actually got an image here that shows the growth around the Manlius landfill versus the DeWitt landfill.
Good idea to see them.
The Manlius site is the perfect opportunity, and we would like to give you the comfort around what it will look like if we can get.
If you would be kind enough to do that now, I think it might be of assistance to see what the view shed will be.
So
Going both directions, heading southerly and northerly.
Chairman, can I, while she's setting it up, could I just mention one thing that I don't know how clear this is to the community? Is there's a difference between the landfill on the DeWitt, the solar on DeWitt is for their private use of their municipality. And this landfill solar powers a community grid, which will benefit the residents in the way of having their energy costs decreased. And I don't know if a lot of people are aware of that. So I just wanted to mention that to you. And also, it's a very good point. I mean, I run and bike along the canal, and every time I look up and I say, ah, there's the solar panels, you know. But I'm not gonna see that when I'm on the canal, when it's on the landfill, you know, so, and not that it's a big deal, you know, but I just thought I'd mention that for clarification for everyone.
And I'd like to add to that, the amount of reduction in your electrical bill is going to be about 10% for participating homeowners. Is that correct?
That's right, yeah.
So if you start doing the math, I don't know how many people look at your electrical bills. But if you've got $150 electrical bill every month, it'll be reduced by $15 a month. I'm not sure that you're going to feel that that's enough of a contribution to renewable resources to trade off what you feel might be the intrusion of this thing on your viewscape.
Well, actually, after 25 years, it's $3.5 million in cost savings to the local residents, which sounds like a bigger nut.
Well, sure, you just multiplied it by all the people
Yeah, absolutely.
times how many years?
The other benefit, 25. The
25
other
years.
benefit is that there's a revenue stream for the town, and that there will be net new tax dollars found for the town, for the school district, or all the taxing jurisdictions in reality, that will be paid annually on a property that heretofore hasn't generated any tax revenues. So there are benefits, and then there are those intangible benefits of not purchasing carbon producing power and not requiring new gas-fired plants to be built to support your generation requirements. So it's an aggregate of good. If you look at only one item in isolation, then you can make the story look cleaner than it is, but I believe it's an aggregate of good.
Well, that's you're entitled to your belief, Melissa. I just happen to be a finance person. And I'm very concerned about the fact that in all of the state of New York proposals on solar, we never hear the amounts. We just hear the benefits. Not the amounts, not how much. It's just, it's a benefit. You're going to get a reduction in your electrical bill. You're going to eliminate some need for fossil fueled energy. I understand that. What I don't hear are the numbers. And what I don't hear are the numbers discounted to present value. So when you talk to me about that $3.5 million, or whatever that huge number was, when you discount that to present value over 25 years, it comes out to be a tiny fraction of that amount.
So, I mean, I can certainly share with you the model with the escalation calculations. I'm I'm not quite sure this is the appropriate body to be vetting the financials of New York solar policy.
Well, this is exactly my problem. I have been told it's none of my business. I agree with Arnie. We don't know what the pilot agreement is.
Well, so we don't do the pilot agreement until we're sure we have authorization.
I was told the pilot agreement was agreed to.
No, we will do a pilot agreement. We have to go to the county IDA and we have to negotiate the pilot, but it is not done until we have approval to build the site. It costs money.
I don't, it's none of my business. I can hear it.
Okay. I think we're all going in the wrong direction on this right now.
Yeah.
We want to see the view sheds, and if you could get them up on the computer so we can see the view sheds and see what, if anything, we can see from the various locations.
So this was a site plan that we prepared. The areas in red are showing where there is mature tree cover types. This is according to the covers from USGS, but also from ground, from the aerial photography, the newest aerial photography. The green you'll see is the wetlands, the limits of where we delineated them. So using the elevation of the top of the landfill and the elevation of the area surrounding the landfill where the homes are. These are the properties here circled in red and circled up here that are at an elevation as high or higher than the landfill and that have a view unobstructed by other housing units of the landfill itself. So those would be the houses that we would anticipate would have an impact, potential impact of seeing the array while using their yard, while using their front yard, while sitting in their looking out their windows potentially. We were sent these photos by one of the residents to the south of their current view of the landfill. You can see, as we said, there's mature vegetation. You can see a filtered view of the landfill cap. Now this is when it's covered in snow, so it sticks out through the trees. You can see it pretty starkly. And we did this rendering using one of those photos where we added vegetation to the trees. And you can see that there are still some places where you'll be able to see the landfill cap through the trees, through the vegetation. But this won't be an unobstructed view of the solar. We did. This is just a drawing for reference to show you. This was the town of DeWitt landfill with the array and sort of the proximity to the trail, the canal trail, and you can see that there's really no vegetation here in between. And you can see we have a very good stand of vegetation here between the trail and the landfill. We also had prepared some information about glare. So in the instances where the solar array is visible, talking a little bit about glare concerns. Okay, so just talking a little bit about the glare. The solar panels have become more and more efficient, and the way that those have become more efficient is by absorbing more of the arrays and reflecting less. So the modern modules have a stippled glass that actually prevents the bouncing the arrays back and promote absorbing those UV rays. And they also have an anti-glare coating that's applied to them. So even 5 years ago, we were seeing different technology. The technology has continued to get better, and that's for two reasons: to limit the glare to people looking at them, and also to improve the efficiency and get more electricity. So there's a lot of information here, but I want to show this relative reflection table. So this is showing the relative reflectivity of different surfaces, and you can see that solar panels, when compared to forest and crops and water and snow, are actually quite a bit less reflective than those other surfaces as far as glare. And we also just included here some information about, and this is, particularly in respect to glare concerns, is that there are more and more arrays being placed at landfills and in the landings, or excuse me, at airports and in the landing zone of the airplanes. And so there's a few photos here of what these look like. It just sort of reinforces that glare is something that's always been talked about if you're looking for something to be worried about with solar arrays, but has not proven out to be as much of an issue as it's been let people have been let. So there's just multiple photos here. So different, these are all US based.
Okay.
That's the visual information.
Visual information from the other angle of the homes that are closer to the landfill itself.
Who is asking that? This is not a public hearing yet. We have not yet opened a public hearing. But why don't we move forward in that direction? Instead of proceeding forward with the special use criteria, since we do want to hear from the public, because Arnie's raised a very good point that the public may have a different opinion than what we have. Why don't we hear from the public? I would entertain a motion to open the public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
We already waived the reading.
Yeah.
We did,
Okay.
we did. Motion made and second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And any opposed? Public hearing is hereby open. And before we open the public hearing, I want to let you folks know that we have heard from a number of the citizens. We have received correspondence from Walter and Angel Broadnax. They did not provide an address. Diane Haller from 465 Summerhaven Drive. Barbara Henry from Starview, no particular address provided. Robert Janoski, 159 Avriel Drive. Ann Lufford, no address provided. Tris Modal, Starview. Dr. David and Eileen Thompson of 175 Avriel Drive. John Whirl of 135 Avriel. And Stephen Whiter of 201 Eureka Drive, Manlius. Some people raise very similar questions. There was one question raised relative to a moratorium. Why don't we do a moratorium? The issue of moratorium was covered by the town board very recently. The town board heard all the facts and circumstances and did not grant a moratorium. Therefore, this project moves forward for a decision from this board. Other questions that several people asked were about decommissioning, and they wanted to know what would happen if this foreign developer were to walk away from the job and leave everything just sitting there. We do not permit that to occur. Every solar panel we have ever approved in the past, we require a decommissioning upfront, either in terms of a cash deposit for the entire cost of the decommissioning or a fidelity bond, a performance bond. No one can walk away without us having upfront a guarantee that that will be properly decommissioned and returned to its pre-existing status. Having now said that, we will entertain a speaker.
Can I say something to that? Because it was on my list. It's something I want to talk about. The lease does not call for a cash deposit. It calls for a bond. We were given a bond, a boilerplate bond document that can be canceled on 90 days notice from either party. We've never accepted a bond, I don't believe. I mean, Lisa, tell me if I'm correct or not. We've always gotten cash deposits. So that's one of my concerns on this project, that if we accept a bond in that format, that's a problem. And so I'm throwing it out there to the board just for their knowledge.
Okay,
May I speak to that?
you're going to talk about a bond?
Well, I'm just going to say that the lease calls for a bond, your code calls for a bond. We provided the bond language. I honestly thought we had put that to bed.
I think that issue will be in the hands of council. I don't see that as an issue that we address here. But I do want to hear from the public tonight. Yes, ma'am. Please come forward, right to the podium. And tell us who you are and where you live.
I'm Anna Davis. I live at 313 Russell Drive. Sorry for finding front of everybody. I want to open my kid's bed. I have a 3 and 6-year-old at home. I love solar arrays. They love solar arrays. If they were old enough, they would come here and tell you that. If you have grandkids, they will love seeing these solar arrays. It's such a fun new thing for them to see. I am excited for their futures. I want them to have great lives. I like nice things. I like to travel. I like, buying new furniture. I like my house. I love heating my house. I love heating it with renewable energy because I can do that for a long time, forever, and it won't affect anybody in a negative way. So I'm here to say I'm supporting this solar project, and I hope more people are. I'm excited about it. I love the solar array that's on the neighboring landfill. I think a landfill is the perfect spot for a solar array instead of just looking at an ugly landfill. So that's my opinion. Obviously, I'm one person who lives here, but if I could bring my 3-year-old here, she would say the same thing. My 6-year-old would say the same thing. My husband would say the same thing. And I know other people in town who agree. They just have other things to do right now. So I just wanted to show my support and thank you guys for.
Thank you for your opinion. Can you tell us who you are and where you live, please?
Barbara Henry, Barbara Henry, President of Starview Homeowners Association. We've received a lot of emails from me in the last few weeks.
We have.
I don't believe we can compare the wet landfill to ours. I drive by there all the time. There's overhead transmission lines back there, not a lot of housing. Nobody's affected by the glare. I go over that road probably 20 times a week. I'm retired from Niagara Mohawk National Grid after 35 years, and I dispute some of the facts that you presented. This isn't the forum to go into them tonight. We've got more important things to do. Now, I'm one of the homes that's directly affected, will be, by the glare. Now, your rendering of the tree growth is very.
Ms. Henry.
Yep.
You're talking to this board.
Okay. All right. Okay.
Can you come to the podium?
I'm new at this.
Can you come to the podium since you have your mask off?
Sure.
Just so you all know, this is not to argue with the applicant or developer. This is to inform this board so that we know your positions and understand better what you're saying and why.
Okay. Well, then the board, I dispute some of the facts that were just provided by the Abundant Solar people. I think the rendering of the tree growth between our homes and the solar farm is generous. I lived there, have for 7 years. We are very concerned about the glare. We are at an elevation that looks down upon the landfill and hills and Fremont Hills. I don't know how you can mitigate the glare. You couldn't even build a berm with very well-established trees. It wouldn't be high enough. And you're welcome to come up to our development. A good gauge of gauging the impact of what we can see by standing in our backyards is not, that's not accurate and that's not fair. Okay. I have 2 concerns regarding this project. One is the process, and has it been followed through the town? The approvals, the lease was granted by which agency? I would like to know why the Seeker has been waived by the DEC. Did I get that information correct earlier in the meeting? The State Environmental Quality Review Act. We'd like to see that. I saw an EAF form in the package that was provided, but it's a short form. And I'm wondering why a long form wasn't done. Who has declared themselves the lead agency? We have an obligation to identify the adverse effect we'll have on our residences and how you might mitigate it. What was the conclusion of that study? The USGS maps that were submitted on the package of January 10th did not even show our 46 units on Averill Drive. It showed a lot of other homes. So those USGS maps were old, very old. Didn't even show the Northeast Medical Center on there, I don't believe. So if they're using that, we weren't even considered. I stated my objections and my concerns. We're wondering the DEC wetland permit. There seems to be some irregularities there. So I don't know who I can talk to about that. Probably not you guys. And we are prepared to file a Article 78 if this goes through, but we're hoping that we can resolve it on a neighbor to neighbor basis. The town of Manlius is our neighbor back there. And our lands abut Cedar Bay Road, right down to the road itself. And I understand that solar is the way to go. There has to be some alternate locations within the town of Manlius better suited for this. I understand it's a vacant landfill and that you're going to benefit from the lease. First year lease amount is $16,000. I have a lot of questions. So this probably isn't the forum, but I've made a lot of statements in my emails, and there are some other people that want to speak, and I'm going to yield my time to them.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Oh, speak.
Yes.
Okay.
My name is Peter Worth. I've lived in the village about 20 years now. I had solar added to my roof, I think in 2012, and none of my neighbors, not once, ever, mentioned anything to me about glare. I really think it's a non-issue. I'm also a gardener. My wife is a gardener, and last summer, I think many people, you can relate to this. We'd go outside and we were eaten alive by mosquitoes. And at first I thought maybe we left some buckets of water around, water breeds mosquitoes, etc. And then the Post Standard had an article. Department of Health collects statistics every month. And in July or August of 2020, they had 444 mosquitoes. And then July or August, same month, a year later, they had 12,500 mosquitoes they collected, a 2,500% increase. And it's real simple. It was a wetter summer and it's a hotter summer, and that's climate change. We need these solar farms. Every time I see a solar farm, it reminds me that people are listening to the scientific community. I see it as a sign for hope, especially for the younger generation. I'm 72. I really encourage the town to go ahead. I think there's a landfill is an ideal site for a solar farm. So I really encourage you to go ahead with the project. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Worth. Yes, sir.
My name is David Thompson. I live in Starview Developments. And I would like to make a plea to looking to consider the green aspect or the non-green aspect of this development. One of the reasons that we live in the Starview is to be closer to the canal and Green Lakes, which I am an avid bicyclist, or I used to be, spending thousands of miles on the canal system. And a lot of time hiking Green Lakes, which I do now. And this project is right adjacent to the Canal State Park. And if you start at the DeWitt trailhead on Butternut and walk towards Chittenango, that direction, you come across the array system in DeWitt, and you walk by it all the time. That's going to be duplicated in some, not identical, but similar fashion, continuing on to Manlius. One of the joys of living in Manlius is its nature green aspect. And I would plead that you consider that part of this development, which is negative, the green aspect, the nature-loving area that we live in. This is a negative for that. I'm not against solar. There are some questions about the economic benefit, of course, which have been raised, and I'm not an expert on that. But the anti-green aspect of this particular project should be considered by the board as maybe a delay, looking at all the details, maybe alternate situation for this particular type of project.
Doctor, I've got a question for you. I've read the letter that you provided us, and your primary focus is on the glare. Do you have a reason to believe that there will be glare?
That's not my big thing, is the glare.
Well, you talked about the canal as well and all of that,
Right, right.
but I circled.
I think the nature destruction of the visual aspect of the solar panels is going to be related in more to not so much where I live specifically, but to people on the canal. This is a positive thing for Manlius as a development. It's a very concentrated area, and it's lovely to have this canal where it is, that we can all enjoy.
Okay. Thank you, Doctor, for coming. Yes, ma'am.
My name is Connie Whitten. I live on 133 April Drive. And actually, I don't have the view of the landfill from my backyard. But I have a couple other things I'd like to talk about tonight. One of them is to preserve my neighborhood. And I think it's real concerning to me that we can discuss a few months of the year when there's leaves on the trees versus most of the time when they're vacant. And for those of us in the neighborhood that walk our neighborhood, whatever, you can see right through the landfill. I understand the New York State incentives, the encouragement to use landfills. I get that, I understand it. But there's some concerns I have just on the whole process as well. So I apologize. Some of these things have been addressed before, so I'll try to skip over them, but I don't want to forget a couple of my points. I wasn't going to come here tonight because I felt it was a done deal. And one of the reasons for that is full disclosure, for 8 years, I sat as chair of SACPA, which many of you have to send all your stuff to us. So I have sat there for years, every other Tuesday for 3 hours, listening to the towns and villages present these cases to us. And I took an oath every year that I would be fair and consistent with administering the laws. And I look at this town now, and I'm thinking, what has happened in my home? Number one, no one even told us about this development until we asked questions, which we should have been included. And I'm kind of embarrassed that we don't have a better plan for this, like the coverage, the leaves, the trees. No one even knew we were up there. No one told us about this. So I'm just disappointed in the process. I'm just going to share that with you right now. But I'm also going to ask some questions that I would ask you if I was being a pain in the ass as a chair that I used to be for so many years. And a couple of those are this. How does this fit into the land use plan of Manlius? I really applaud the woman that left here earlier that's in the village. It's wonderful. I know it's sustainable. I don't have a problem with solar panels. What I have a problem with is the town has spent, I think, $150,000 to do a land use strategic plan, of which I've got questions myself. And we don't have an answer, but the plan is, we're going along and creating all these sites without a plan. And for some of you that know me, I harped on this for years when I was sitting on soccer. Just show us a plan, Route 31 plan, Town Clay plan. Manlius at least used to have a plan all the time. So here you spent the money to do it, taxpayer money, no plan out of it. So I question that where is the plan? I know you said you don't want a moratorium, that's the town board's purview, I know it's not yours. But I felt compelled to say something because I got a little skin in the game with this project. I understand you're not requiring a seeker because it's on a landfill. And I understand that technically you don't need to have a seeker.
You just looked up the state law. It's a state law that we are not
Required
permitted to do
Yeah,
secret.
I could have told you that. Yeah, you don't need to do that. So I understand it doesn't go through that process. But I'm concerned that sometimes we're benefiting the few at the cost of the many. And Arnold, I think you mentioned that we're going to be able to use this power. I haven't been with National Grid, but I spent half my career with Carrier. Half my time at Carrier was creating energy efficiency compressors for home air conditioning, appliances throughout the whole country. We understand solar and the use of it, but the sustainability of how that power gets to the grid, to my house at 133, I want to know how they're going to get it to my house so my bill is reduced at 133 Adriel Drive. If you got a cable coming to me, that's great. My understanding, unless I'm naive to this, power is going to go out on the grid. I don't know how they're going to catch it and get it to my house so I can have the 10% reduction. The second thing is, how many residents in the town of Manlius will have that 10% reduction? 100, 200, 300? And when I looked at the lease, and I didn't extrapolate out 20 years because probably won't be alive by then. But when I looked at the amount of money, the first year you get $16,000. I understand the revenue. One unit at Adriel Drive is paying you that in taxes, just one. So when you turn around and you say, what are you doing to benefit the town of Manlius? I'm really questioning my town right now. And I know I'm getting a little emotional about it because I'm just disappointed. So what I think is what's happening is the few are being discriminated against with the screening process as well. That vegetation, I gotta tell you, I got 3 dead trees in my backyard. They died. Are they gonna come and plant the trees for my neighbors? And when the leaves fall, when the winter's longer, are they gonna come over and put artificial greenery up? You live in that area and see, and it's not even the glare. It's the fact that the scenery has changed to glass panels, cables. It's just not the best use of land when you consider the benefit of the residents that are paying taxes in this town and want, as Dr. Thompson said, the greenery and the beauty of the area, which Manlius has. So what's the best use of the plan? The other thing I have not seen in everything I read, this is my anal behavior from my years at Carrier, what's the whole production of energy from that? What do you get, 10%, 20%, 30%? Some in this country only get 30% usage from their solar farms. I haven't seen any of that. Maybe there's in there, but that's one of my questions as well. How, not only how will they get energy, the other thing that concerns me is, Rich mentioned it, the pilot won't be done until after it's all over with. So it's almost like your monkeys counting the bananas later. What's the pilot? What are we giving away for this? And how are you going to determine who's going to certify the financials of a foreign company to decide if they're profitable or not and if they owe us anything? I haven't seen that in any documentation. Again, forgive me, it's all coming back right now. So I'm just thinking of how I sat where you are. So I'm asking those kind of questions and I apologize. But it's the fact that we're benefiting a few people at the cost of very many. And the other thing I don't understand completely is you're going to be constructing on a landfill. I saw in there that everybody's going to be protected. And when you start drilling in, my concern is, are we going to have methane release? We're going to have toxic waste release. I understood they're preventing against us, but you can see my question of trust right now when they're telling us wait till the leaves grow on the trees. That's going to be your screening, but anybody else in the town of Manlius is going to have it screened. DeWitt's not in our town. I took that right off the table. That's not my town of Manlius. What they do in DeWitt was always a very difficult town to come before soccer, trust me. So they've done their thing. I just asked you to do the right thing. I just ask you to consider the value of the town, the value of the residents, and don't do for a few at the cost of many. Figure it out. You've got money spent for a land use plan that no one's even talking about. So I know there's concerns. I volunteered as you did for years. I respect every one of you sitting there. Many of you I know. Some of you used to come before me and I was a pain in the ass. I told that, I said, yeah, I'm gonna be a pain in the ass tonight. So I respect the process, but the process isn't complete. It's almost laughable that somebody's gonna say, well, the green leaves will grow and it'll be fine. We got winter 6-7 months of the year. And where you live, you decide you're paying $13,000, $14,000, $15,000, $16,000, $17,000 in taxes for the town of Manlius. And all of a sudden, the beauty that you had when you bought your home is gone. Whether there's glare or not, I'm not going to debate that. And I do believe solar power has to be part of our delivery system. I worked with that in my professional career, I believe it. I'm just asking you to think about where you're putting it. I mean, I'm afraid that the little plot in Fayetteville in the village where there's a fence is going to have a solar farm with trees next to it pretty soon. There has to be a strategic thought process as to what's going on in the town. I'm begging you to do that because the town used to be the gold standard for planning. The planning board at Manlius was the gold standard. And I just see pieces of it kind of falling away and it's being pushed through because it might be the best thing to do and it's motherhood and apple pie, and I get that. But just think about what you're doing. That's all. And I apologize for my energy on this. I just have too much of it on this subject. Thank you.
Thank you for coming in and talking to us. Okay. Hi there.
Pam Lapidus. I live on Stony Kill, and we're halfway up the street. And when we moved in 27 years ago, we asked the question, is there anything that could be built on that hill? Because the view is just beautiful. You can see the greenery in the summertime. And occasionally I've seen the deer cross through there. And that's another concern of what happens to the wildlife when we have all these structures there. The other concern that I have is the glare, because from my kitchen window, which is a big double wide window, my kitchen table sits right there and I have this beautiful view of the hillside. And my concern is that in 5-10 years, when I go to sell my house, what are people going to see? And are they going to want to, buy a house that looks out over this landfill? And you can see it. I know they say the trees are not always full of leaves. I walk the neighborhood all the time. I come down the hill from the top and I can see this beautiful vista. And my concern is that that view is going to just be ruined with all the solar panels. And one thing I wasn't thinking about is the glare, because the glare from the angle of the hill, knowing how steep it is, that it will generate toward our house and just be, glaring at me when I'm sitting there having my morning coffee looking out there. So I wish you would take into consideration, because the values of our houses in that neighborhood have gone up extremely a lot in the last few months. That number of houses have sold, and that's a big concern of mine. But again, what people are going to see when they look to come in my house.
Okay, thank you. Okay. I think we're going to be hearing from people who are watching virtually. So we're going to take a quick break and we'll get back to you. We'll hear from you.
That's fine. I'm not worried.
We got people sitting online and we'd like to hear from them.
David, if you can hear us, just unmute yourself.
Sorry, can you hear me now?
We can. Can you tell us who you are and where you live?
Hello, my name is David Zuber. I live on Romare Road, right at the top of the hill on the cul-de-sac. I just want to tell you, the rendering that they gave you in terms of the tree line is laughable. I mean, that is the best interpretation they could have given you to say that this is not going to affect anyone. I can tell you, going up and down Stony Kill, you can see this. At the top of Romare Road, you can see this. and even up on Coventry Road, you can see this landfill. This is going to affect a lot of people. And the thing that I'm a little bit perplexed with is that this notice that we got came out a few weeks ago, right? And it only included people that lived within 100 feet of this proposed location. There are plenty of people outside of that radius that can see this who will not have the opportunity to come here today and to speak on this topic. And I do think that that's pretty disappointing. The other thing I want to bring up here is that I know a lot of people have been talking about glare and how much of an issue that is, but from what I know of solar panels, and feel free to correct me if I'm wrong here, but solar panels generally face south-southwest. So that means everybody who can see that side of the hill is going to be looking at the superstructure of these solar panels, all the aluminum, all the metal, and not to mention the fact that this is being built on a grade, a pretty heavy grade as a matter of fact, it's a hill. So they're going to have to lift these up with poles, and then they're going to have to tilt them to capture the solar. This is not going to be a minor visual impact for this community. It's going to be pretty major. And all of the visuals we've seen so far are of locations that are flat and, you know, serene next to airports. I mean, this is in the middle of a neighborhood. It's been like this for many, many years. And it truly will be destroying the view for many folks here. And to others' points, it's going to be degrading our value of our property. And we pay quite a bit of money in taxes. I mean, within 2 years, we pay the amount of taxes that they pay in one, which is also concerning that they pay so little money in taxes on a huge solar farm that they're going to make quite a bit of money on. And we're paying very close to the same amount of tax revenue or tax money compared to them. The other thing I'm concerned with here is if this does go through, what does this mean for us as homeowners to take advantage of tax credits? Because if we sign up for this thing, then we're going to lose our ability to use solar tax credits, I assume, because they have to get that offset from somewhere. And I don't know if anybody can comment on that, but that's the way I've been reading it, and I could be wrong here. But I'd like to hear some more information on that. And the final point I'd like to make here is that solar panels, they are green in terms of their energy efficiency when they're actually producing. Anybody can tell you who lives here, it is not sunny all the time. It snows a lot. It's gray very often. So we're talking about peak efficiencies quite a bit of the time. But, you know, what happens when we start to put these solar fields everywhere and then the sun doesn't shine? You know what I mean? Is that going to affect our electricity that comes to our house, especially in the winter months? A lot of us depend on electricity for heating. There's a lot of unknowns here, and as we move to solar, and I'm not opposed to solar, but I'm also concerned that we'll have an incident like Texas did, where they're relying on renewable energy, but they also have no backup when things go wrong. And that's something that should be considered here as we move towards this. And the final thing is that solar panels, they are green, but they do take a lot of energy and resources to actually create. You have to mine this heavy materials out of the ground. That costs a lot of energy. It's toxic. The actual materials are coming from God knows where, under what conditions for the workers. This isn't as green as everybody always thinks all the time. You got to look a little bit down the road and see, how is this actually produced? What's the carbon footprint of actually creating this panel? And then when the life expectancy is over, what happens to this thing? Who's extracting these heavy metals? Who's dealing with the toxins? I haven't seen any plans on that in any of the documentation. So there's a lot of things to consider here. And I think, you know, just from a simple standpoint of most people here, you know, this is, I think, an issue for the community that we're worried about our views. And these people are walking in saying, no big deal. Well, we know better. That's all I have. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Zuber. Hello, can you hear us? Anyone there? Is this Robert?
Yes.
Robert, can you hear us? If you can, unmute.
All right, can you hear me now?
We can.
All right,
Robert,
I'm sorry. This is Robert Janoski. I live at 159 Avriel. I'm probably next door to Dr. Thompson. I've been there about 3 years. I'm a retiree, 80 years old from the pharmaceutical industry. My wife's a retired teacher. And when we bought our place 3 years ago, we walked directly out onto our back porch and said, we've got to buy this place. The rendition of the pictures that you show are a distortion of what the view is. And it's not a valid view that when I go out on my back, a small patio, but out on my patio and what I see. And that's the very reason that I bought up there in that location. Also, yes, I am concerned about things about electrostatic emission and what are they really saying about where, they're collecting it on the site and what that emission is rather than, I get concerned about saying it's very small, but it's coming off of individual units or whatever. But that's not my main point. If this goes through, that view's destroyed. I'm 80 years old. I'll sell the place in a few months and put it up for sale. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Is there still one more?
Yes. Okay, we have two more now, so we'll get this one and then we'll. Mr. Messinio.
Name?
Joe Messinio.
Sir, if you can hear us, unmute yourself.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, sir.
I am unmuted. Can you hear me?
Yes, we hear you.
Okay. This is Joe.
Tell us, you're upside down, but we can see you.
I don't know why, so I'll turn that off. This is Joe Messinio from Salt Springs Road. I oppose this particular location for the same reason I opposed it on Salt Springs. Well, this is a dump, and we all know it's a dump. The people from the people who see this from above don't see this as a dump. They see it as a beautiful pasture like any other grassy field. Okay, so once again, it's a property rights issue. It's not about mosquitoes. It's not about climate change. It's about the proper location of this resource. And in my opinion, the folks from Abundant Solar are taking something that is already owned by the landowners that look at the property, and they're paying them nothing for it. So they get to devalue their property at no cost to them, and it simply doesn't belong there. So that's really the essence of my comment. So thank you.
Thank you, sir. And if you, I recall you speaking to us about Salt Springs. So you know for a fact that nothing is a done deal. And in fact, that particular application was denied by this board.
Right, and we greatly appreciate that.
Okay, thank you, sir, for your thoughts.
Thank you.
We're going to come back live. Someone else?
My name is Chris Motul and I'm at 185 Avriel Drive. I don't have a direct line of sight, as not everyone does, and I'm also not opposed to solar or advancement, but I do think that further consideration is warranted, and you have my letter there. A couple of comments. Before you opened it up to questions, you said some people may have different opinions from our view, quote, our view. And I hope that the board keeps an open mind and has not already made a decision. That statement.
There is no decision made. We are all open.
From you said our view. So it sounded like you've already kind of decided this. So I just wanted to make that as a comment. The other thing, and this is just because I don't know how things work. individuals' comments taken down by the record keeper, or does that not work? Yeah. Okay. All right. And to your point, I understand what you said. Panels on a house and a solar
Speak.
farm are two different things.
Sure. Speak to the board.
Panels on a house and a solar farm are two different things. My comments really mostly relate to, and perhaps you've answered them already, I didn't hear them answered tonight, but perhaps they've been answered, is on the application from the company. There are a number of questions answered yes, and has further consideration, and that is in my letter, you can look it up. Has further consideration been, or have those been resolved? Floodplain, wetlands, archaeological, threatened animal, I didn't hear anything. spoken about
They
that.
have addressed that to us in a 34-page response.
Okay, so
to
what
us.
about, so how do I get the answers to that?
It's open to the public. We can make that available to you, that response.
And perhaps you can, in a couple words, tell me, what about the bats? What about the archaeological? They did, the form did not answer parking. Is Erie Canal not a state park? They did not check it off on their.
They've
form.
indicated they checked the wrong box on that.
But this is what we're seeing as individuals, as residents. We're seeing this on your site. So if things have been corrected, perhaps we should see the corrected version. Because this is all we have to go by when we're looking things up.
And I apologize for that, but we are changing what we're doing, and we're constantly asking more and more questions of the applicant. This is not the first time they've been in front of us. They've been here numerous times, and every time we ask them for more. And our town engineer gave them some detailed questions, and they came back with a 34-page response to all these questions. And I'm sorry you don't have that, but we make it available to the public.
I know, but this is their initial project information. So you would think that a 33-mile Erie Canal park, they would know about it, would be able to answer the question correctly. Other things, is the land lease available? Apparently it is available for viewing because my predecessor did. Is that on the same website with the same? Okay. And I would like to know more about how the power is being, who it's being sold to. It's not just going directly from the panels to the consumer, so it's going to be sold to someone. And also, the company saying, well, we will, and other people have mentioned, but we will, we as residents can benefit from it. Want more specifics on who it's being sold to and how the residents sign up.
I think that's a very legitimate question, and I think we're going to ask the developer to provide an answer tonight.
Okay, all right, appreciate that. Because it's easy to say a benefit, but when you get into the specifics, I'd be curious as to how that's done. And also, it's really not a question for the board, but I was just a little surprised that the company only has 25 employees based in Canada, but they seem to have created various LLCs wherever they create a new LLC, I believe, I could be mistaken, for whatever project they're working on, because that is information that anyone can look up on the Department of State website to see if the LLC that they're creating is active. It has been, it's still, they've paid their annual LLC dues. It seems like that's what has gone on. I was also a little surprised or a little curious as to the affidavit that was signed by the director in 2020, it obviously was signed in Canada because the notary, and this doesn't have anything to do with you ultimately passing anything on, but I couldn't even read the name of the notary. And as a notary, as a New York notary myself, there must be very different rules in Canada because the name was not even written out. And so anybody trying to look it up would have no idea on an affidavit, and that was the affidavit from the director of the company. But again, I would like to know how it's going to be sold and more specifically into that.
Okay.
And also the park, the Erie Canal, that is so important to people. Nearby residents and people coming in, and that is immediately adjacent to, I mean, it's right there, the whole extent. And I don't know if that's really been addressed. I haven't heard it really addressed tonight, but perhaps again, it's been addressed in previous meetings. Thank you.
Thank you. I think there was one other person that wanted to speak here, at least.
So my name is Shelley Chaika. I live at 5732 Stony Kill Street and have lived at that address for 37 years. When I bought our property, my husband and I, we were told that the active town of Manlius landfill was being closed. And sure enough, within a few years it was. We lived through that project for 3 years. Constant dump trucks, constant noise. Several years after that, we had to come to the town because of the odor that was pouring out of the landfill. My husband represented our family because we had very young children at the time with a couple of our neighbors, and we were assured that there was products being dumped into there to neutralize the odors. That took, again, a few years to resolve. Your rendering of the trees, please come to my home, 5732. My husband is retired. Come and look at the view that we have enjoyed all these years, please, all of you. And that most of those trees that you're referencing are ash trees. Many of them have been cut down over the last few years because they are dead. The town does do a fairly good job at coming and mowing or cutting back a lot of that brush, but I can see the deer, I can see the flatlands. Now all of that will be off all of my windows. So all I'm asking is that the town consider the residents that yes, they do pay much more taxes than myself and will be looking down upon it. I am right there separated by one road to the actual land of where it's going to be built. You mentioned that it was going to be closer down towards the cemetery, but that's not where the pictures are referencing. It's totally on the top of the old landfill. And again, we were told back then, 30 years ago, that perhaps the town was going to make a park because it was never going to be built upon because it was a landfill with the methane gas and all of the venting and sealing. So again, as a resident that lives right across the street and has for many, many years, to consider that there are neighbors that it will impact considerably more for the value, that yes, am I going to get any reduction in my energy bills? Maybe $10 a month? What is that? For me to be able to enjoy the view that I've had for 37 years. So again, I'm not up on top of all the DEC and all the regulations. I'm just talking from my heart where I've lived all of my entire life. So please consider maybe another alternative in the town. I'm not saying the town doesn't need to have this project, that it is value to solar. Not as much as they're trying to tell us, but maybe there is some value to solar that perhaps I don't want to use rural farmlands, but maybe not on somebody's back door. And is all I'm asking, please to take that into consideration, that the neighborhood that lives directly across the street from where all this building noise that many of us lived through one time. Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
Excuse me, what was your address?
5732 Stony Hill. And please, my husband Paul is retired home any day. If you would like to come to my home and see my views, please. Those trees are dead. Those trees are dead. And because of the wetland and the runoff, there isn't as much green as you may think that you're rendering this. So please, at any point, come and visit.
Thank you.
We're going back to virtual.
Mr. Bassett coming in.
Bassett.
Mr. Bassett.
Bassett.
Hello. Can you hear me?
We can, sir.
Okay. My name is Tom Bassett.
Okay. And
Yes,
where do you live, sir?
my name is Tom Bassett. I live at 7321 Barbary Lane in Manlius. My wife and I have lived there since 1979, have raised 5 children. I can't say that I have direct skin in the game because obviously I'm a far distance from this landfill site. But I spoke at the public hearing related to the moratorium, the proposed moratorium with respect to the approval of solar projects. I spoke against that moratorium. I cited the town's ordinance related to solar facilities, and that was passed a number of years ago. The fairly extensive criteria that were incorporated into that ordinance to balance various interests, including the interests of people who own property in the vicinity of proposed solar facilities. But as you may know, the moratorium was not approved. So the way I look at this, I went to the hearing though, and a whole bunch of young people showed up, and they reminded us that we're in a really, really bad situation. All you have to do is look out there at the obvious evidence of major changes in world climate, and some effort, multiple efforts need to be made to try to salvage our world, essentially. So I understand the arguments made by individual property owners in the vicinity of this landfill, their fears, their suspicions about devaluation of their property. They claim an entitlement to a view shed, which is a little bit problematic because it reminds me of someone buying an acre of land out in the country, and then somehow expecting that the beautiful view of the countryside, the hills in the distance will be preserved. But the only real way to preserve such is to actually own it. I have a lot of, and then there's various comments have been made about loss of solar tax credits. Well, that's completely inapplicable because that's only if you're installing a system on your own home. The structure of this is totally different. It has nothing to do with personal tax credits. I actually have signed up for an arrangement where we will save 10% on our electric bill by having our power provided by a company like that proposes to build this facility. It's coming from somewhere in the Black River in Jefferson County. And when the dust clears, our electric bills will actually be 10% lower than they have been. So that's actually consistent with actual savings. But we really do have to, and I also think that this reclamation of this landfill by this use is actually a reasonable use, because what other use could be made of the landfill? I look at the town of DeWitt. I go to the park alongside the Erie Canal, and where the town of DeWitt landfill has a solar array on it. And they're benefiting, the town of DeWitt is benefiting from the establishment of that, the permission of construction of an array on that landfill. I don't see where there's an enormous difference here. But basically, as I see it, it all boils down to individual rights versus the public interest. And in our society, if we just keep focusing on individual rights and ignoring the public interest, the community interest, we're in deep trouble, because on a whole array of issues. So again, I understand the emotional power of the arguments made by the opponents of this particular project, but I would support its approval.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
One more? That's right.
Hands up if she's not responding.
To do it late this spring or the fall. It's gonna put more hay up there. It's gonna put more crops up there this year.
Nope.
You can go live if you want.
Okay. Is there anyone else here who would like to speak? We have no one else virtual?
No, let me try one more time, but. Debbie, if you're listening and want to speak.
I'll make a motion.
Second. Is that,
Oh, wait, there she is.
No, hold that motion.
Debbie, can you hear us? You may need to unmute.
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, can you tell us who you are and where you live?
Yes, I'm Debbie Maffei. I live in Erie Village on Parkington Circle. And from all that I've heard, I'm vehemently opposed. I am very much questioning that lease and the wording, and being that it's a country out of the US. It just sounds like it's going to be a liability to the town of Manlius taxpayers, to me. And that's all I've got to say. I'd be vehemently opposed.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
That's all I have.
We have no one else on virtual, no one else here.
I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
Second. Second by Arnie. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Public hearing is hereby closed.
So good to have you
I think this is a good breaking point on this. We have not yet heard back from county on the county recommendation from their Department of Development. We should be hearing from them before our next meeting. I think we have a lot to talk about. I appreciate everyone who spoke tonight. Did you want to give some answers to some of those questions? I think it's a legitimate question as to how do people sign up? Who are you taking as signups? How does that work? And if you got anything else that you would like to tell us, now is the time it would be a good time to talk.
Yeah. So thank you. I do appreciate all of your concerns. Your requests, people who come here to express their interest or challenge. Sorry.
What's your name, please?
My name is Melissa.
And your department name?
This is Jillian Blake. Jillian is actually not an abundant employee. She's with partner with Judas. She's a local resident, and so for me, this has been unfortunate because I came prepared with a deck in order to lay the table and to inform public and to give them an opportunity to understand the scope, scale, and nature of the project. So I'm sorry that we didn't get to take that approach tonight.
We're here. We're all here.
I understand. So I think, first of all, what I'd like to clarify is that, yes, I am Canadian. And I work for Abundant Solar Power, which is a US entity that is owned by Abundant Solar Energy, which is a Canadian entity. I'm a homeowner in the United States of America. I pay American taxes and I have a visa to work there. So just to lay the table. When we came to New York State in 2016 and set up Abundant Solar Power, we started working with the Central New York Regional Planning Board, having participated in a request for pricing on this municipal opportunity across the 5 counties of Central New York. And what Chris and his team at the planning board had done was they had gone out and they had looked at municipally owned sites specifically. And those ranged from landfills to water plants to vacant lots. And they had done an assessment actually through another consulting group to identify sites that might be good opportunities for solar, both because of the scale of the site and their situational relationship to grid infrastructure, which is a really critical part of our assessment process in the solar development world. There were 33 projects in that original portfolio. Some of them have hived off for reasons beyond our control, but we are working through that project portfolio slowly but surely. We have, in most cases, we find ourselves on either landfills or municipal sites like power plant or water power sites where we don't have a whole lot of consideration for very close or abutting neighbors. Abundant Solar Power also does what we call self-originated sites outside of this portfolio. We've built 6 so far in the last 4 years, and we're working on 2 others right now. And in those cases, we typically go into communities and we find ourselves working on properties that have neighbors. And in those situations, ironically, one of the first things I would do is go out with my local engineer, so either Labella or Hunt or a partner with Judas, and I would walk the community and inform people about who we are and what we're looking to do. And I'd get a temperature check for the community, and I'd be able to tell the story about community solar so that people weren't working under misimpressions about the benefit, the financial model, benefit to the town, benefit to the local residents. We didn't do that in this case because it was a landfill. It was quite established, and we believed that it had a fulsome natural barrier around it and that we weren't going to be alienating anyone. So honestly, I can say to you that I would have been knocking on your door had we seen that differently. And then we found ourselves bang in the middle of a pandemic, and we were actually locked out of the country. So this is really unfortunate that we're having this conversation at this late date. What I would like to assure you of is that there is actually a state community solar policy It has actually improved in the 4 years that we've been working on this program. And now, if you are interested in subscribing to local green energy generation, we will run a subscription process. We'll associate with the town. There might even be flyers that come out from the town. There'll certainly be public awareness sessions where anybody who's a resident in this town, provided you're in the utility load zone in which the site is located, you would be able to sign up to subscribe to solar power from this array. Now, to your point in question, it is a virtual arrangement. The power does get generated and it does go into the grid. But the law of the electron says that when the power goes into the grid, it goes to the first point of pull. So the first home that needs power will get power from that local generation and so on. So I know there are a lot of myths out there that say that the power from this grid is going to go to downstate or it's going to go out of state. The reality is that that's not what we're doing. We're producing local distributed energy that will be used locally. And that actually removes the requirement for big transmission towers, right? Which are a bird of a different color when it comes to electrical considerations. So the power will in fact be used locally and you will be subscribing to it. And one of the improvements that has through a very long process become manifest in the last year, and we will be in fact seeing its benefit when this power comes online, is that the utilities have been mandated for a single bill structure. So in the past, if you subscribe to abundant power from a local array, you'd get a bill from us, you'd get a bill from the utility, and it would be the delta between the two that would be a cost saving. But now there's a single billing structure where when you sign up as a subscriber, we provide your subscription information to the local utility. And as you use power, you actually generate a value of distributed energy resources credit that gets applied to your bill in real dollars, not in kilowatt hours, not in generation versus transmission, none of that, a real dollar credit that gets applied to your bill. And so your bill, your single bill that you're already paying, nets out the delta between your green energy at a 10% discount and what you would pay to this. So that.
I got a question. Why do you have to sign up? In other words, there's a preference to someone if you've signed up to get something. Why not give it to everybody? And further, if your model discusses that the electrons coming out of your grid go to the first house and the second has fewer available to the second, third, fourth, fifth, etc., how does that benefit the town? Village of Manlius? It seems to me, where does the money come from?
So the money comes from the utility. So we generate power and there's a real value to that power, and it's been established by a state program called Value of Distributed Energy Resources, called VEDR for short. And VEDR is actually an incredibly complicated process, but it actually affixes value to certain segments or tranches of the food chain in the generation of electricity. So one of them is locational. One of them would be associated with carbon offsets. One of them would be located with transmission benefit. If we don't have to transmit power over long distances, we're not experiencing transmission loss. We're not having to build new transmission infrastructure. One of them is, if the state doesn't have to build power production facilities, if it's built with private money, then it's cost savings from that. So it's this complex layer.
Why is there a cost savings?
Excuse me, sir. The public hearing portion of this meeting is over. You should have asked the questions before if you had them before. I'd like to have her present what she's presenting.
She's just explaining it now, so we couldn't have asked a question before you explained it.
So I would just like to say that when we originally discussed this project with the town, we most definitely went through the concept of VEDR, We went through the concept of an option for what the best use or what the best approach for the town was. Was it a straight predictable lease over 25 years? Was it cost savings against the town's electric bill? What was the preferred approach? So the preferred approach that was decided on was a straight up lease. Then there would be the addition of the pilot agreement. So it would be a revenue stream with an escalator that was predictable over 25 years that the town could count on. And it didn't matter whether the sun was up or down, you folks were going to get your lease and your pilot. And then that left more or all of the power that was going to be generated from the facility open for subscriptions to the public. So when we do this in other jurisdictions, and sometimes we do community solar, and the town can take up to 40% of power off the array. So if the town takes that power, then there's less power available to be sold to the local constituents. So it's a bit of a balancing act, and that's what was considered by the town board at the time. So this is where we are today. We have a lease. The town will get that reliable, predictable, escalating lease and pilot payment over 25 years. And the power will be available for local subscriptions. Okay. So, you know, there are no tax credits to be considered by local residents. Anybody who buys power can subscribe to the green energy. You know, we've talked a lot in the planning board process about you know, what this is going to look like, about the road approach, about how we support the requests of the first responders, all that. I think that's all still to be decided. But I would like to just go over a little more of the process that we went through. So we did in fact have these preliminary discussions with the town about the structure of the lease. And then we went back for another 2 meetings at the town board and passed a permissive referendum that is a process that has to be followed. And that was in April of 2021. Then we applied for, through Barton and Judas, the wetland permit from the DEC in May of 2021. We received our New York Parks Recreation and Historic Preservation Letter of No Impact in February of 2021. We received our interconnection agreement and paid our 25% down payment to National Grid in September. We got a determination of no hazard to air navigation from the FAA in December, and we applied for our special use permit in October. So just off the top of my head, all those lovely questions, which I will leave you to and see if I can't provide them to Lisa Beeman, the clerk. With respect to the secret questions, in January of 2019, the seeker structure for landfills disturbing less than 25 acres changed. And the state was so supportive of the programs, provided you were going back to the EPC and getting all the appropriate approvals for wetland impact and post-closure updates. They determined that because they already had a really fulsome understanding of what was going on the CAP, that it became a type 2 determination. It didn't require any deeper research. So as a matter of course, when we go into a landfill discussion, we produce the short form seeker application because we want there to be, you know, a basic fence around the project so that people can have a common understanding of the number of acres, you know, what it's going to look like. But the vast majority of those questions that you were querying, they come generated in an auto mapper. So you put in a location, you put in the tax ID, you verify a number of things in terms of the siting of the project, and they auto-populate. So the parks question was auto-populated. So I'm very sorry for the confusion. It's Trail, but the actual software auto-populated the designation. So So we believe it to be a trail. You know, it was also clarified when we submitted to Parks and Recreation for a determination of no impact. That we recognize that it was a park. Just in short, you know, it's not our intention to skirt the issues or to gloss over them. The rendering that Barton and Majudas did for us this week with respect to the trees, we believed it to be conservative. So we have frequently done what we call back porch generations. I did one project up near Rochester where we literally walked around, stood on everybody's back porch, took pictures, and we did, again, renderings, so subject to interpretation of what the site would look like with the panels on the right angle, at the right height, with right sight lines, and potentially with plantings if that was the requirement to mitigate the visual impact. In the absence of being able to do that in the short turnaround that we had, we did what we thought was our best effort to illustrate a conservative, fully leafed construct of what the array would look like. We can certainly work on that, and it's the first I've heard that the naturally occurring mature tree growth is not in great shape, and we can certainly look at that. We have done plantings at many other arrays. Typically, we look at doing, you know, low hedge-like plantings, which wouldn't be terribly useful here, but we can certainly look at it. So I don't want anyone to think that I'm being defensive or that we're walking away without wanting to offer solutions or more understanding. We do want understanding, and you know, we're typically neighbors for 25 to 30 years. We don't want hostility on the way in the door. We would like to have a fulsome understanding, and we're more than happy to answer individual questions.
Can I ask a question?
Please.
In speaking about the glare, I wonder if we, because you gave a whole presentation, well, not a whole presentation, you gave documentation about current panels and how it's changed through the years, and glare has been something that I know people are concerned about. But I'm wondering, can you just explain the function of Barton and Majudas and like what type of firm you are and where you got the data for the glare, and then the graph that you showed with the glare from panels as opposed to the snow, because I'm just trying to think the landfill has snow on it right now, and if that documentation that you showed that the glare from the snow is a lot more than the glare from what panels would be, and maybe for a comfort level for the community members, if they don't want to take your data, I can understand that maybe, but maybe from our town engineer, we can verify that and somehow get the same type of information.
Well, I would strongly suggest if you want to be self-taught, you go to the National Renewable Energy Lab website. It's the preeminent source for all scientific information related to renewable energy. It's located in Colorado. A number of our concepts and statements actually come from NREL. The Federal Department of Energy is also a very good source. I would say you have to be as careful as you would be about anything else that you look for on the internet if you just start Googling. You know, with respect to glare, we've gone through an evolution, and when we started in New York, I think we were using sub 300 watt panels, and this array will be built using close to 500 watt panels, and that's technological improvement, and part of it is reducing reflectivity, increasing transmission, increasing efficiency, making them bifacial. It's a technological revolution, and it reflects but no pun intended, very well on the product that we deliver to a site, because they are less impactful and more efficient.
Yeah, and I just didn't know, like, your firm, so that for anybody who doesn't understand what the expertise of your firm.
Martin and LaJudas, we were brought on board primarily because, we're a local firm and because of our expertise actually in landfills. So that's primarily my focus on this project, is looking at the array on landfill cap and the potential landfill cap, and making sure it's done in the right way to be protective of the existing site. We can provide we have other types of engineers, we have electrical engineers, we have a facilities group that does buildings and things like that. We can provide the source for that, that graph. I didn't generate that graph, that came from a paper. So
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure everybody understood your function and like the engineering behind that. And I'm a data person and a science person, so I just want to make sure that everybody, understands that.
We can provide that source of that material, but that wasn't, we didn't generate that.
Julian, I have a question for you. And I'm listening. As far as regarding the photos here that Barbara sent us, I don't know if it does it justice, because it's really hard to see the landfill through these trees, even though probably where she is, it probably is different than the picture. I'm just curious, where would the solar panels be in reference to the little area we see here? And I mean, I'm probably more concerned with up where Paul and Shelley live, because they're looking the opposite way. And I'm wondering, will they be hidden? Yeah, it's hard to tell from these pictures where the panels are really.
I would need the address from where those photos were taken, so we could line it up precisely on the landfill cap.
Oh.
To make sure we showed you exactly what you would see.
Yeah.
Most of, the flat portion of the landfill will be covered in solar panels. So anywhere where you're seeing the flatter slopes, and we're not putting them on the steep side slopes, but anywhere on the flatter slopes, there would likely be panels placed.
Where would that be in conjunction with?
So you would see it. You would see.
You would see it.
Most likely.
Okay.
Yeah, a little.
All right. Okay. That's all, that section. Yeah, okay. Yeah, okay. All right.
Did these move or are they stationary?
Stationary, yeah. Thanks.
We don't put,
No, I wanted to ask you a question, but I'll wait.
put moving panels on landfill because there's too much pressure.
You had mentioned the lease on several occasions during your talk. Who did you negotiate that lease with? Abundant. Who did Abundant negotiate the lease with?
Town board and
Yeah.
Tim Protection.
And who?
Tim Protection.
Yeah, that was with
Nobody else was involved.
the board. and legal.
Nobody else was involved in that negotiation.
Town board and Tim Protection.
Okay, I just wanted,
In the pilot as well. That was important.
well, we don't know what the pilot is.
One comment, just based on the comments we heard. I just want to be clear, because I don't think we stated it, especially in this setting, that this would be a ballasted array. So there's no proposal to, to put stakes or pound anything into the landfill cap. We wouldn't be puncturing that landfill cap. So concerns about gases or anything like that. We wouldn't really be changing anything about that landfill cap at all. This is just sitting on top of it. And we'll have to show that, prove that in our engineering report to the DEC that we wouldn't be.
Would that look like
penetrating.
Dewitt's landfill?
Yeah.
Yeah.
One last question, if I could. Are you using tier 1 panels?
Yeah.
Yes, okay, thank you. I learn something every week.
Thank you. Thank you for speaking and answering questions.
Can I, Mr. Chairman, just in reference to Mr. Theobald's question about the view from the housing development to the north.
Sure.
The landfill, those folks, if they are able to see anything, see the back of the array.
Oh,
So we know, certainly no glare issues from that vantage.
Could you identify yourself?
Chris Carrick, just engineer.
Okay.
So I don't know the exact address of those.
Okay.
Those are, yeah, those are from the.
These are.
These are from Starview.
So these are from the south, so they do.
I think that's. that would have-
Towards the direction of
From-
facing.
Okay, okay, in the opposite, obviously.
That's.
All right.
Thank you, Chris.
If I can just share just a couple more pieces of information. The question was raised about the wildlife impacts. Typically, we don't really see any. The fencing is constructed to allow the deer, especially to jump in and out.
Right.
Because we don't want them getting caught on a fence. It's the last thing we want. The drilling issue was already addressed by Jillian. The length of the construction was raised in relation to construction of the closure of the landfill at the outset. I just wanted to note that the construction of these solar arrays is relatively quick. It's a matter of 6 weeks to 3 months, I think, farthest outset. So this is not something that goes on and on for 6 months or 12 months. So just wanted to make that point clear. The issue about setting up LLCs for each project that is has nothing to do with the fact that Abundance hosts parent companies based in Canada. That's a typical practice of any solar developer, regardless of whether they're foreign or domestic. It's just the way these projects are set up.
County report.
And then finally, just in terms of the environmental benefits, I didn't want to say that because reference was made to how
Especially
progressive the town has been
next time.
on environmental matters. We've done the calculations in the planning board. And we estimate that the power generated from this array will be equal to removing at least 200 passenger vehicles from the road each year. The electric use of at least 500 homes per year. We're switching 35,000 light bulbs to LED each and every year. So this is an environmental benefit that continues over the life of the array. So, that I think should not go unsaid. Really just for the benefit of residents.
Chris, you said construction would be 6 weeks
An array of this size would be 6 weeks to 4 months.
because we have 2 projects that have been under construction probably for 4 or 5, maybe even 6 months now. So this is different than,
I can't speak to those projects. I mean, certainly we've seen supply chain issues that are affecting every industry.
In the last 6 months.
Because of the
Okay.
Okay, folks.
yeah, they put it in the ground. Yeah, okay.
I think we've heard an awful lot this evening on both sides of the issue. I think this board has an awful lot to talk about. And so we're gonna adjourn this matter until February 14th for further discussion and for special use issues and yeah, everything. Thank you all for coming. Where is that done?
And I did.
No, I didn't make an emotion to adjourn yet.
Well, we got minutes.
We do.
Oh my God.
Yeah. No, that's mine. That's mine.
That's your job.
I did it for years, then I got off, and Fred did it for years.
Well, I took Fred.
I thought we approved the minutes.
No, remember he held up because.
Oh, because she had to look at it.
You started it.
Yeah, and then I got to step down again.
Did you second it? We didn't do that. We didn't get there.
Okay, folks, why don't we continue our meeting?
Yep.
Okay, regarding the minutes of our last meeting, we're postponing that until February 14th.
Okay.
Oh, all right.
Council has not had adequate time to review everything.
Fair enough.
Folks, we're continuing the meeting, so if you'd be kind enough to either be quiet or
Thank you very much.
exit. The last item on the agenda
We have another one.
is an application for an amendment of a special use permit. This is relative to the Kirkville Road solar array. We had approved that some time ago, and it's my understanding that they are asking for some type of an amendment. And we have somebody on board who's going to tell us about that request and why.
Yes, thank you very much. My name's Brian Madigan. I am the project manager for our Kirkville Road solar project with Renewable Properties. We obtained our special use permit on March 8th of 2021. So I am here preemptively to request a 1-year extension of that special use permit. And the reason being is just sort of what was mentioned as the last hearing was coming to a close, primarily supply chain related issues. I don't know if you'd like me to go into too much detail. Basically, our module pricing is the estimates or bids that we've received from our construction contractors are very high at the moment, given supply chain issues and obtaining modules. And so we're not going to begin construction here in the next few months, perhaps by the middle of summer. And just, I guess, also wanted to mention that we did last spring make a significant investment in clearing the site of the trees that were on the property, and I believe our landowner cleaned up some of the equipment that he had been storing there. So we intend to start construction just as soon as it becomes more palatable from an economic perspective.
Brian, it's my understanding that in order to connect to the grid, that you have to obtain a certain number of homeowners or businesses that are signing on. Have you done all of that? Is that footwork done?
I believe that we're fully subscribed on Kirkville, but I would need to check with our team member that handles that aspect.
The question that's being presented to us is we are being told that we're reaching maximum capacity for connecting to the grid. We're getting awful close. And if we reserve for you, that means someone else who approaches might not be in a position to do so. So we want to know how serious you are about moving forward, and just how significant is this supply shortage?
Well, it's
my thunder.
Oh, well. Supply chain issue is a serious issue. I mean, I can't predict the future here, but we remain optimistic. In terms of our queue position with the utility, that remains the same. And so I'm thinking, I guess I wanted to clarify if you're asking about our queue position and then the amount of generation that might still be capable of new projects coming online in your area, or are you asking, do we have all of our is the project fully subscribed from a customer perspective in individuals who have said they want to receive their electricity from our project?
I think I'm asking both.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I need to check with our interconnection, or excuse me, our customer subscription manager. I believe that Kirkville is fully subscribed, but I'm not positive on that. But in terms of our position with the utility, that is still viable, and we plan to construct just as soon as possible and maintain that. I'd have to double check on if and when that might expire and what we might need to do to preserve that, but I believe we still have a bit of time.
March 8th.
March 8th.
Where are they getting their panels from?
I'm going to go with Joe on this and ask a question. You've had a year now and no permit was requested. How can you convince us that within the next year you will be able to pull a permit? Or do we give you a 3-month extension, 6-month extension, or something less than that Because my concern is the same as what Joe said. If we extend you, it's like musical chairs. We push somebody else out that might be able to come out and perform. How can you convince me to give you an extension?
Well, I don't think it really works that way from the utility interconnection perspective. So you're not really, you don't have control over that issue. That is separate from the town's individual land use approval process.
No, but if we killed your special use permit, that would open up whatever your understanding is with the utility to allow somebody else to step in. How can you convince me that within the next year, if we give you a year extension, you'll perform?
I'm not sure. I can't predict the future.
Why are you asking?
I can't predict the future. I mean, I can tell you that we have made a significant financial investment. We have gone to bid on this project twice with construction contractors. The reason we didn't start construction last summer is that because the scale of this project is somewhat on the smaller side, the economics around just having this project move forward in the construction contract process was economically tight to begin with. So we had a larger project in the town of Lockport that was scheduled to go, or that we had been hoping would be approved in late spring last year. And that got delayed in terms of the local approval process. And so we had to then wait on Kirkville. And that has now left us in the position where, you know, the supply chain, the market has changed. I mean, it's hard to rent a car right now. I mean, it's there's a lot of issues that are just unpredictable. I can't tell you for certain that we would construct at you know, a certain date, but it's our intent to make good on our commitments with the utility and to bring this project to commercial operation.
Have you gotten your panels already?
No, that's the issue.
That's the issue. Where are they coming from?
Let's double check our site plan. I mean, they're one of a couple different brands, which I believe both of them come from China, essentially. So,
are they tier 1 panels?
Yes, from an insurance perspective, we personal liability or personal insurance company insurance perspective, we source tier 1 panels. I've lost you.
And read them without glasses.
Okay.
And we think you're back on, but we're not sure.
Yes, can you hear me or see me now?
I kicked the thing.
The bottom line, everything that you need has been ordered. Am I understanding that correct?
No, well, no, because the way it works is our construction contractor, our EPC, engineering, procurement, and construction manager, we contract that portion of the project development process to a provider, and they procure the goods. And so we went back out to bid for this project as well as a couple others that have recently been approved, and the pricing for modules and other equipment, specifically the modules, was much higher than anticipated, and so we have not procured the modules or other pieces of equipment in relation to the project.
When will you know? When will you
Well,
know if you can get them?
I think that we'll have a much better sense, early summer, probably June, as things continue to shake out here with our progress in the pandemic. And I can't say for certain. I was hoping to get a 1-year extension, recognizing that things are constantly in flux.
Have you bought the land yet?
It's a we have a lease agreement with the property owner.
And that's in place at this time?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, these are unprecedented times, so I would make a motion to extend the permit
We have a motion pending to extend the
for a
permit
year.
for 1 year. We have a motion pending.
I'll second.
We have a motion second to extend for 1 year. All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
4, 5, 6. Oh,
Opposed.
Ian, I'm sorry, he confused me. What are you for? Yes.
I'm in between, it was just. I'm for it.
Brian, we're approving you by a vote of 5-2. We are watching our other developments going up and they're moving right along. And so we're rooting for you, but it came closer than you think, tonight's vote. Okay?
Thank you very much. And based on the conversation around the last project, I certainly understand, the townspeople have many questions about solar, and appreciate the vote of confidence. I hope that we're able to deliver this, sooner than anticipated, and appreciate your time. Thank you very much.
Hey, Brian, before you go, I've got one strange question for you. There appears to be in the middle of this project a 30-foot circular concrete structure.
Yes.
What is that, and is it going to stay?
No, it does not stay. It's a chicken coop.
Oh, boy.
It's not supposed to be larger than 50 square feet. What's going on?
And that's a
And that is coming down?
Yes.
Oh,
Yes.
concrete. Okay.
That's all right.
Thank you, sir. Your extension request is granted.
Work on that.
Yeah.
We're talking to Kurt though, it's agriculture out there.
All right.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
A second.
Second by Valerie. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
We stand adjourned. We're going to need to have a good, healthy discussion, and then